Tell me I know a bit about what the national EV policy is.
Yeah, sure.
Do you want to give me your sort of maybe thoughts or just an overview?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I guess the great thing is we've set a target of having 64,000 EVs on our road by 2021.
Yep.
And to show our own commitment to that, we're making sure that a third of our fleet, so around about 5,000 out of 15,000 government vehicles, will be EVs by 2021. And that there will really stimulate the market, we believe, and really show that as government, it's our part of what we need to do is be leading from the front.
Yep.
So yes, it's about getting more EVs on the road. It's about reducing emissions, and it's also about then trying to stimulate some more vehicles going into second-hand market that will come out of those government fleet. I mean, most of our vehicles, as you know, from government across all sorts of ministries and departments, are actually doing very short trips around the cities.
Yep.
And so that's why it's a really good opportunity to get more of those vehicles running low emission EVs.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so I guess my first question would be why 1 and 3? Why not wherever possible when the
great. Yeah, good question. I guess so some of the vehicles obviously will be operating in areas whether it's Department of Conservation or Fisher MPI. They're going to be off the beaten path, and until those vehicles start to evolve so they're practical for that use, obviously they'll be excluded. And then the other thing is, I think we always need to keep in mind is that government needs to make sure they're getting the best value for taxpayers on the way through. So we've set this target of 1 and 3. We believe that's a really strong target to begin with, but I think what we'll see over time is an evolution of that, and we see more and more, as more EV vehicles hit the market. Yeah, I think we'll see some better economies.
So the 1 and 3 is going to be sort of a minimum sort of
great starting point.
We
right?
hope that
great starting. Yeah, absolutely, great starting point. At the moment, just over 4,000 EVs registered in New Zealand, and we're talking about 5,000 more that government own in just the next 4 years.
Cool.
So yeah.
All right, so I guess the next idea would be we've got this contestable fund that was set up, and that's awarded, I think, $20 million towards various EV projects around the country. Do you think that we'll see any sort of growth in that fund, or do you think that's the best way of pushing forward EV adoption or EV infrastructure?
Well, I think it's infrastructure is really important, right? So I come from a tourism background, and I'm really keen to see more and more people visiting in New Zealand and having a low emissions holiday as they're going through the country. So if that contestable fund can help more infrastructure go into charging stations up and down the main line, I think that's a really great result. So I think, I genuinely think that what we're seeing as far as this policy is incredibly strong, and it will continue to evolve as these vehicles continue to evolve.
All right, cool. So I'll also ask you a bit about other parties' policies. Labor hasn't actually announced their EV policy yet, but Greens have mentioned their fringe benefit policy, which would be taking the fringe benefit tax off EV use, so that companies have more of an incentive to buy EVs. What do you think about that?
Well, that's I guess for the Greens to come up with their policy and people to decide. We haven't included fringe benefit in our tax.
Do you think there would be any sort of advantage to having tax breaks or tax benefits for EV purchasing?
Well, I think what we're seeing already is so there's no road user charges for light vehicles and also for heavy EV vehicles, and I think that's a really good incentive for a lot of people to get into it. So that's where we would see it. But no, we don't have a policy around reducing FBT.
Yeah, so it's going to be a matter of sort of maybe seeing where that goes and seeing if there's any need for further tax breaks if the EV rates of adoption aren't met.
Yeah, I couldn't comment on where that will go to, but certainly at the moment we believe that the policy that we're introducing is a really strong policy, both on climate change through reducing emissions, but also just getting people to think about the way they're using vehicles and the types of vehicles that they need to use to go about their job. I mean, I think when we start to see companies around New Zealand like Foodstuff starting to deliver groceries around town using EV vehicles, that's really exciting because it talks about actually a commercial application of a vehicle versus most of our vehicles sit at home. For 90% of the time, will sit redundant in the car park 90% of the time. So let's actually have these vehicles when they're being used. Let's have efficient vehicles on our road.
Sounds good. So we're looking at no road user charges until 2020.
Yeah.
Is there any plans to extend that?
Yeah, like I haven't. I'm not able to comment on any further past the year, but I think this is a really we've got an aggressive target of 64,000 vehicles, and we want to try and make sure it's as accessible to as many people as possible. Right. So removing that barrier, if there was one, of road user charges, I think is a good incentive for both for both families, but also for businesses to start considering how they might include EV within their home vehicle or within their fleet.
So I guess looking at other benefits of EVs, currently, petrol emissions contribute to about 500 deaths per year
Right.
of New Zealanders. So, there's that health benefit from no emissions. There's also the benefit of reducing our dependence on external trade from importing petrol, because we can supply our own energy. I guess my personal belief as one of the Christchurch EV user groups is that EVs are sort of better in every single possible fashion, and we want to drive that adoption wherever possible. Do you think there's any sort of room for the government to sort of come out and say, where possible, EV, purchase an EV, or sort of a public campaign to sort of inform people about how great EVs are?
Yeah, well, I think we've done that with our policy announcement around really talking about our commitment to having 64,000 EVs on the road. I mean, I think being out with you today, William, and seeing your commitment and the Christchurch EV group's commitment to advocating on behalf of this is fantastic, right? This is my first time in an electric vehicle, and I'm fizzing. I'm not a car person per se, but I've really enjoyed the opportunity to drive this vehicle and to see how practical they are. I think probably there's a little bit of a communication challenge, just because people probably believe that or the perception is perhaps that that they'll get you down to the supermarket, but probably that's about it. But learning from you that the range of these is at least 150 kilometres, and there's charging stations, and it's an evolving kind of market where more infrastructure is going in. I think that's really exciting.
Cool, awesome. All right, I guess. Do you? One last question to sort of finish things off. What do you think? What else do you think? Being government, you could do to push this forward, or to sort of help the conversation along? Oh,
look, I think it's a great question. I think first of all, with government committing to buying a third of their fleet into EVs, I think really signals that intention that this is the way of the future. I think the internal combustion engine, we're seeing higher emissions, cost of running, all these types of really factors that people will start to consider. So I think the more of these we see on the road, and the more conversations that people can have about them, I think is a really good way to continue the advocation that we're talking about. Government, I think, can continue to lead by example with that, but I think it's actually it'll be families and businesses who I think will actually will get on board and be adopters as well. There's, like any industry, there's always going to be the early adopters, and once they start to seed the market, then I think more and more people would be.
Basically, you think that you don't want to have a top-down led push from it. You want it to be grassroots, and you want sort of people to go and say, we want this, as opposed to trying to impose some sort of mandate.
So I mean, our party's all about personal choice, right? And as the cost of vehicles continues to reduce, as technology continues to evolve, then I think we'll just see a natural customer choice and around purchasing of EV vehicles, or at least considering to purchasing EV vehicles. I think nobody's going to argue with the technology. Nobody's going to argue with the emissions, with the reduction of emissions, and the positive impact that will have on the climate. So that's a no-brainer. But actually, what it often comes down to, consumers make their decisions largely based on what I feel in my hip pocket. And once they can understand that there's actually value in these vehicles, and that might be over the lifetime of the vehicle, as opposed to just the purchase price, I think people will continue to get really, really excited about these vehicles, and I think we'll see more and more of them on the road. And I look forward to seeing you out there advocating on behalf of your group. I think it's fantastic work.
Cool. Do you think, a bonus question, do you think you'll want an EV for yourself at some point, or maybe this has made you sort of think a bit more about trying more?
This has certainly made me think about it. 4 years ago, I was fortunate enough to be taken up to San Francisco with a company, my little company I was working with, and I went in a self-drive car. And so for me, that just really opened up my horizons as to where transport is heading. And I think this is just another great example of where we're going, the direction that transport is going in. And I think we'll continue to evolve. I'd love to have one of these. But at this stage, I would need to wait. You don't go and buy a vehicle every 5 minutes. So it's about finding the right vehicle at the right point in time, and I'll certainly put it in the mix to consider, like everything else.
All right, cool. Well, thanks a lot, David, for joining us, and I hope you manage to replace your SUV at a point in the future.
Absolutely. Cheers, William. Thanks very much for the opportunity.
Thank you.